Hello and welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. It's Wednesday. I'm Dave DeFore here with Seth Partnow and Mo DeKeel, so that means it's Nerder. She wrote, guys, before we get started, want to let you know next week over at the Athletic, we're going to be doing our best of 2023. It's a compilation of the best stories, the best podcasts, maybe the best YouTube videos. I'm not sure if they're going to make the cut this year or not. But it's all going to be collated, collected. So go over there and relive some of the Athletics' best stuff from 2023. We mentioned it yesterday on Hoops Adjacent, but my favorite story was the Marvin Gaye national anthem story that Marcus Thompson and David Aldridge wrote last year. I sent that to my mom, and like my mom's not like a sports fan, but Marvin Gaye meant a lot to us. So I love that story. So go and check that out. It's going to drop next week. There's going to be some really great stuff that maybe you missed out on. We do the best work in sports journalism and storytelling as far as I'm concerned. So it's going to be packed with stuff that you probably didn't get a chance to read because The Athletic is so prolific. So check that out. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, Dave. Doing well. Ready to roll, baby. Come on, Seth, pick up the energy.
Happy birthday to my dad.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Papa Partnow. And it was my dad's birthday a few days ago. So
look at that. Everybody's little December birthdays, huh? That's rough growing up.
That was
you don't get the double dip.
That was actually a complaint of my father's at dinner on his birthday. Was like, man, I wanted to be born in January.
Oh man. Okay, well, so we're a quarter of the way through the season at this point, and we love our little arbitrary timestamps where we can look back at the season that has been and make some determinations. And I've got 5 questions here, guys, from the first quarter of the season that I feel like we need to answer specifically. Not that they need to be answered for the greater good of the universe, but stuff we want to talk about.
No, put that importance on that. Put it on that importance. We are the holders of the space-time continuum. We are Loki on the throne of time. We're doing all sorts of stuff.
Spoiler.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to say this. I love that we can talk about all the Marvel comic book stuff we want, the comic book movies. That's fine with Mo. But you bring up professional wrestling, and it's just dumb. That's a bridge too
out
far.
The door.
It's
the door.
Okay.
Gone.
This one nerdy thing is totally fine, but not this other nerdy thing.
Yeah, as we nerd out on a third thing for the bulk of the show. Anyway, continue, Dave.
That's true. It's what we do. My first question, and it's timely, guys. Are the Warriors cooked? This is the question that everyone's asking right now because obviously they've not been playing well. And for a lot of us here on Wednesday morning, we watched Draymond Green lose his mind again last night and just take a wild swing and connect with the face of Yusuf Nurkic. He's probably going to miss a few games. I mean, he was suspended for 5 games already this season. He's been ejected from 20% of the games that he's played in this season. And we can't even use the Steph's not playing excuse for him because Steph was out there. They had a chance to win this game when Draymond was ejected. Just completely losing the plot. So, guys, beyond just Draymond Green maybe being cooked as a person that you can trust on the basketball court, are the Warriors just cooked? Is this it? Is it over?
Yes.
There it is.
I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about this because I wrote an article almost 10 years ago coming out of the 2014 finals and kind of the way that that Heat team kind of collapsed over the course of that series, as well as I think Spain getting eliminated from the World Cup pretty quickly. And these were dynasties that ended, and that's how it happens. Like an empire doesn't fade, it collapses. The analogy I like to use is, going way back to a great 80s movie, Cocktail, Coughlin's Law, all things end badly, otherwise they wouldn't end.
File.
And that's, I think we're seeing that with the Warriors.
It's absolutely disastrous, and there's a lot of different reasons to go through it. But I think the obvious and most glaring one is, is Draymond okay? Like, honestly, like, this is getting kind of wild, when you kind of look at over the past 18 months. punches a teammate, gets suspended for too many technicals in March, stomps on Sabonis' chest, gets suspended for a playoff game, and then gets suspended for the chokehold on Rudy Gobert, and then is probably going to be suspended for this latest incident with Yusuf Nurkic. And Nurkic had the best line. Man, brother needs help. Like, there's something, like, I don't know what's going on with Draymond outside of the basketball world and what we see on the court. But, like, this is absolutely destroying the team. There's no other way to say it. And I know he loves the team. I know he cares about the guys and whatnot, but he is absolutely screwing these guys over and over again. And I think it's becoming such a reoccurring problem that it's now a massive issue for the Warriors that they got to figure out.
You're absolutely right about that, but I wouldn't put the decline solely on the feet of Draymond. I think that in some ways, like, his pushing things too far is almost a subconscious recognition that it's not all working.
They don't have
gotta
it.
go. They don't have it. Exactly.
You weren't listening to what I said in the beginning. Said it's multiple things.
It's multiple.
And we got to start with Draymond.
Yes,
I didn't
okay.
say it's all Draymond. I said we got to start with Draymond.
Yeah.
Seth, come on, man.
I think
the
we
first
start.
question of
Here's
5.
what it is.
Let's
I
go.
think- here's the thing. We have to start with Draymond because that is theoretically the thing that can be controlled. The other stuff is guys might be cooked, but the
it's not even
Draymond thing. I think to Seth's point that he was trying to make, Draymond has gotten a bit. He rides that edge. We say this all the time about certain athletes. They ride this edge. You want them on that edge. You need them on that edge, right? The problem is he is falling over the edge because that edge doesn't get it done for the rest of the guys enough. Klay Thompson's not good enough for Draymond to be able to inspire him. And now it's just out of control. I mean, it is just over the top. And I think Draymond knows that this team is cooked, and that's why it's kind of out of control.
I mean, he's Colonel Jessup, right? Like, you need him on that wall. You want him on that wall till he orders the code red. I think the issues for the Warriors go much beyond that and much further than just Draymond, right? Like, we know all the stuff. Heart of soul. Okay, we get all the spiel for him. This is also a clear failure of development, and it's a clear failure of the front office not identifying the right guys in the draft. Some of it was, the James Wiseman pick was a disaster, but that was also off the pandemic. And, like, that was kind of a weird draft as we, right. It was the pandemic, right? Yeah. So that was that kind of really threw that draft out of sorts and things like that. But at the end of the day, they're playing Kuminga and Moses Moody now. And this is a year too late. They needed to let those guys play through those mistakes last year so that they could be players this year. They didn't, and that's a Steve Kerr issue. I mean, we had a game where Moses Moody was cooking through the fourth quarter, and then he takes him out in the last 6 minutes. Like, there's a lots of issues there. So it's a failure of the front office. I think it's a failure of development. I think it's a failure of Kerr on the coaching side being too dependent and reliant on his veterans and not giving the young kids chances.
I agree with that the front office and development hasn't been good enough, but this is what happens. And the Warriors were able to extend their championship window sort of longer than maybe it could have been expected. First with the being able, Kevin Durant dropping into their lap, and then with Andrew Wiggins is what's looking now like a pretty outliery season after they were able to acquire him in a pick. Part of being all in for a championship is you are mortgaging the future. And the Warriors have been all in on a championship more or less for, 9 years now. So, and that's a longer run than most teams get. But what happens is you get hollowed out. You don't do the development work because you're always trying to win every night. You're worrying about tomorrow night, not next month, not next year. And so this is a natural life cycle of a team. It's just they held it off longer than most do. So the collapse is almost more shocking and harder because of how long they've sort of held back those forces of entropy.
Well,
Yeah,
they also
but
just, I mean, they haven't been able to fill out their bench. The depth is just not there. So, like on the nights where Clay doesn't have it going, you don't have somebody who can help you out off the bench. Really, I mean, it just doesn't exist. And so Clay looks cooked, just straight up cooked. And it's hard to tell if it's just that or if it's because Wiggins has been so ineffective, or because those two guys are also hampered with having to play offense with Draymond and Kevon Looney. I mean, there are structural issues with the team also. It's a little bit of age, it's a little bit of depth, but it's also just, does this roster even work now with everyone having taken like a half a step back? You know, like Looney is not falling off a cliff, but this isn't Looney from 2 years ago.
last year was
yeah.
unbelievable. But this is the thing. Like, again, I'm going to go back to the front office and identifying situations. Last year, we were screaming that you need size. Their big move in the trade deadline was Gary Payton II. Somebody remind me, how tall is he?
Not,
But he
like,
plays
not big.
Okay, he plays big, but he's not a big.
Yeah.
And they need a big body. And I think that's those things that matter for them. And I think that's part of the issue there. It's the combination of all of those things. And Seth, you're right. Like, yeah, empires fall. This is how it looks when they fall. And it's usually kind of a massive collapse with all of those things. I just think the way they could have extended this a little bit longer. They had opportunities there. I mean, we can talk about the draft mistakes, you know, like who was it over Franz Wagner? Kuminga, was that who they picked over Wagner?
Yeah.
That looks terrible. I don't think LaMelo Ball helps this team because, I mean, his defense and the way he wants to play would probably get him punched by Draymond. But like, you know, the Wiseman pick was a massive bust for them and a massive mistake for them. And they try to do the two timelines and not fully understanding how to do it and having an actual set plan for it and being committed to it. It's a lot of things there. And I think, you know, it's clear, you know, and I was on this team. I was very high on this team going into the season. I thought this is one of my screwed up the predictions. Don't worry, I got more right than wrong. But the this has been a massive fall for them in the way they're playing, and it's just like watching it over and over again. And now they're trying to play through the mistakes, and I think it's a year too late.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the Warriors are cooked. I think that's where we're at. Yeah, works for me. Next
Until they're
question, guys.
next month. Until next
That's
month
right.
when they reel off 8 games, and we're like, oh.
Just to put a button in the tournament here, our second question: did the tournament underperform, overperform, or meet your expectations? And this is just your expectations, not societal expectations, not some sort of ratings bar they needed to clear.
Question for you.
Answer.
Just the tournament, the Final Four, or the whole in-season
I
tournament?
would say the whole in-season tournament. We're putting a pin on this thing. We're putting a button in
Okay.
it.
I needed that clarification.
I mean, I'll go first if you guys don't want to go. I mean, I think it.
I don't mind.
I would say overperformed for me because my expectations were low. I didn't think that we would see a difference in intensity in the games, and it's obvious that we did. Anyone saying we didn't has not watched enough NBA basketball in the last 5 to 7 years to determine that. And I'm an expert at this, so I'm willing to just make that statement. Anybody wants to argue? My number's easy to get. The intensity was way higher, especially once we got to the single elimination games. That's the success. It was cool. That's it. All of this is arbitrary, and so anyone arguing that it's fake or not important, that's every game. So this was cool. I'm against the banner, though. That's the only problem I've got.
Why?
I just don't know if you need a banner. Do the cup. Put the cup on display. Let's just do that.
You can do both.
I think
it doesn't matter. But
banner for
like,
championships.
why not celebrate your accomplishments, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know.
Suspend the cup from the rafters.
Banner.
I mean, like,
that's something.
And not in LA with them earthquakes.
So for you guys, so
for
you guys, how is it?
For me, it's pretty simple. It's what have we been talking about for the last month? We've been talking about basketball. We've been talking about on the court basketball games. And I think the tournament games are a huge part of that. And you compare that to what we on this show have tended to pivot to kind of this time. Oh, December 15th. Well, guys can get traded now. is a lot of what we're talking about, and we'll get to that, and that's fine, and that's cool when we get to that. But getting a month longer to just talk about basketball on the floor was amazing, and so for me personally, just on that level, it was a massive success.
Yeah, it's a massive success. I think we've screamed it for 4 straight podcasts. It worked, right? And then it's my always caveat is let's see what the next few look like. But I think the whole deal is, we, as I said, we got great basketball. The players were invested, and that's the most important thing. And with the players being invested, that's led to some important stuff with seeing the product on the floor being better. Look at LeBron very clearly from the very first in-season tournament game was dead set on winning, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And I think that was pretty obvious, and that's kind of the result. I think I understand people complaining about the final game, but let me just put it to you this way: look at it as the Final Four in college basketball. Some Final Fours suck. Like just suck. Like the games aren't good, the championship isn't good or whatnot. Like that's what happens. Some Super Bowls suck. Like that's what happens with these games. That's how we know they're not rigged, folks. Because the game, if it were rigged, it would be more exciting, more interesting every time. But that just is what happens. Overall, though, yeah, man, it's definitely overperformed my expectations.
And I think this leads into what I think our next question is. The other, and this is lucky happenstance, is the tournament I think also provided a platform to introduce someone who could be one of the new faces of the league, and that's Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and do that then. We'll go to the next question. Are we seeing a full-on changing of the guard in the NBA? I know this is a funny thing to say because LeBron James has been in his prime, it feels like, for 20 years. He still looks from some nights like he's in his prime. Steph Curry, still ridiculous. Kevin Durant, still ridiculous. But it does feel like the youth movement has taken hold. And guys like Tyrese Halliburton, De'Aaron Fox, I know
Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren being better than we expected
as
out of
a
the box.
rookie. Yeah. Like we know that the skill level is higher and higher every single year. Like the rookies come in like they're better now than they were 10, 15 years ago. They're more ready to play. But man, what we're seeing with some of these guys, 23, 24 even, it is out of this world. And it's not just impressive play, but it's also leadership and poise and things that normally it's like 27, 28 where we start talking about these guys doing that. So yeah, are we seeing a changing of the guard this season? I mean, should the all NBA team, should we expect it to have a lot of new names on it?
We'll have new names on it.
Yeah.
I had new names on it last year. That's just Shai was a first team all NBA guy last year. Right. Like every year there's going to have new names on it and whatnot. The question is how many of the old names start to kind of fade out and the influx of fresher, younger guys in all of those things. It is the planting of the seed of the changing of the guards. Because look, still at the very top, because it's not a changing of the guards if it's Jokic, if it's Embiid, and those guys. But it is showing you that the NBA has a line of talent that's just incredible. And we've been talking about this for kind of a couple of years now, sort of seeing this thing coming, where it's not going to be like when MJ retired and everybody's like, well, who's the guy in the NBA? Now it's like in the NBA offices, like, we got too many names to be faces of the league. Like, who's the face of the league? No, it's faces, plural. We got 10, or whatnot. I think there's a lot of guys in that stuff. I think it's more what I find more interesting, and it sucks because we just talked about the Warriors being cooked, but it's also the old guys going, not yet. And I think that's kind of an important thing for me in that sense. I think we're close to the changing of the guard, but it's the old guys going, not yet.
We're a quarter way into the season, and the top 3 teams in the West are Minnesota, OKC, and by record, Minnesota, OKC, and Dallas. Now, Luka's been around for long enough, so he doesn't seem like part of the new guard. But you think about that, that's and then you throw in Orlando in the East, and that's a lot of sort of new faces, both teams and star players. And so I think you're right. It's premature to say that it has happened, but if we're looking at the standings kind of the same way at the end of the year, I think this is and it's great for the league to sort of be able to be able to turn that page if they can. But I'm more optimistic about the next wave than I have been in the last couple of years.
Counterpoint. It's not where it ends in the regular season. It's where it ends in the playoffs. And I'm sorry, like everybody can be mad about it, but that's the thing. And it's not about winning a ring, but if we have a Final Four where Minnesota is in it, if we have, OKC gets to the second round or even the conference finals or, whatnot. And I think it's along those lines. Like I think we all still, I think, are on the Denver bandwagon of Denver's going to win the championship. Yeah. I think we're all on the Boston's probably the best team in the East. I don't think any of us have the expectations that Orlando's going to be in the conference finals with those. I think there's the teams right around that mix. They're still right there in that sense. It's exciting and it's promising. Let's not fuck it up by putting too much pressure on it. Damn it. I didn't want to drop one this episode.
It was a good seasoning though.
Yeah. I literally said to myself, not today. And 20 minutes in.
That's all right. We're saving those. We're saving those for a segment. All right, next question, guys. Ja Morant comes back next week. I'm very curious to see what this Draymond suspension is, especially thinking about Ja's suspension. Ja Morant comes back next week. Does he solve the Grizzlies' problems? They're 6-16. They are 5 games outside of the last spot in the play-in. And Seth, their offense has been not great.
They're not great. 28th on the season. A little bit better the last 2 weeks, but still, they don't have a lot of bucket getting, and they don't have a lot of dynamism. And Desmond Bane has been like everything you could have asked for him and more. There's just not a lot else there. Jaren Jackson, I think, is probably someone who we would hope would be helped by having their best creator back. So the good news for them is even as big a hole as it dug themselves, 5 games over 60 is not like insurmountable, but that's a big hill.
I mean, look, guys, the honest truth is like, I don't know if they have that. And it's not just so much Ja. Man, they've been decimated in the front court with size. I mean, like before the season even started, the Steven Adams knee injury, Brandon Clark with the Achilles tear late last year. They just don't have enough size. Jaren Jackson and Jaren Jackson will look better once he gets Ja back, and his stuff will improve there a little bit. But I mean, it's been kind of a down year for him. I honestly feel like this is a gap year for the team and the organization, and to really kind of figure out what are the next steps going forward. I think this is a big year. Not saying it's impossible, but also in the Western Conference. Like when you look at the top 10 in the West right now, it's shocking. Houston's number 9. That's wild. But like Pelicans, Houston, Phoenix, and Clippers are in the top 7 to 10. Warriors are just out, or actually 2.5 games out at 11. Like, who are they replacing in that?
Right.
And I think that's kind of the stuff we look at, and I just don't see them really, really kind of making that trip.
They need to play really well the rest of the season, and they need to get some help. I think the team, if you asked us, I think the team we would expect is Houston. That would be the one we would expect to regress the most. But then, as you say, then they also have to, if Golden State rights themselves a little bit, does Golden State drag themselves into a play-in spot ahead of them? So I think that they need, it's their destiny is not really in their hands.
And on top of that, like, we're talking about a team that they can climb up. have you guys watched Portland lately? Like they're in scrappy in games. I don't see them getting in the play-in tournament, but like they have the same record as Memphis. Like they can go on a run the way they've lost 4 straight, but they've been really feisty in a lot of those games. I think it's not a wild. I think neither of these teams make it. I think Memphis, this is just a gap year. I don't think there's much of a fix with Ja coming in.
And Memphis, look, man, they got to figure out how to sign my man Vince Williams, VCU Ram. Two-way player. That's what they got to figure out. How do we get this guy on our roster going forward? I just don't know if their offense is going to improve enough to make that big of a difference. I mean, this team has not really set the world on fire in the half court anyway. And Mo, you kind of hit the nail on the head for me talking about their front court issues. They are over reliant on second chance opportunities. They are over-reliant on Steven Adams and Brandon Clark and what those guys bring, and they don't have a way to fill that gap. So even when they get Ja back and they have that elite drink-stirring guard, Bane gets to slide down as far as his level of importance and play in that secondary guard role. Jaren gets to slide back to his role. They still just don't have the other pieces that really make their offense functional. So I just don't know if they're going to be able to get hot and win. We'll see. I mean, obviously you add a player of Ja's caliber to the offense, it should improve. But the last few years, it's not like it's been that great. So it may not be enough. I'm with you on the gap year.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, just the offense has been a struggle, in the half court for a little bit. Like this is one of those things where it's all been dependent on Ja getting to the rim and those things. And granted, that's a good strategy. That dude gets to the rim quite well, but I still feel like these are issues I had last year with them offensively in the half court, and I wanted to see more variations with things, and Bane's going to help a lot and with all those stuff. But man, that's all I got.
Are you guys following this court case at all? The Ja Morant court case?
No.
I'm not I wouldn't say I'm following it, but I am laughing at it. I've been sent like a few clips. There was apparently he had to demonstrate checking a ball like in pickup for some reason. I just, it's amazing. What an amazing time to be alive. Now we know, like, is it constitutional? Like, is the way we check the ball constitutional? I don't know. I guess maybe we'll find out.
Can I make a basketball point before we move on, please?
Yeah.
No.
So I think if one wanted to be optimistic about the Grizzlies, you would say that there's some low-hanging fruit for them to pick. They're 26th in their record against sort of other bottom end teams with bottom end records right now. And so and they haven't played a disproportionate number of those games. So there's a lot of wins to be picked up there just by them taking care of business against, the San Antonios and Detroits and of the world. That if they can, they're 4-4 against those teams right now. If they can just take care of those games, that's a lot of games that they can make up to sort of climb the standings there. So, And I think that just getting that talent infusion of getting a top whatever player that Ja is, I think really that's probably the place where it'll show up most. So if one is an optimist, but again, that 5 games and 3 teams to pass is a lot.
Look, if you're telling me to put my money on the Warriors figuring it out and making the play-in or the Grizzlies, I'm gonna choose the Warriors. And I think that winds up being the race for the last play-in. I mean, man, what a weird season so far. Okay, last question, guys. Have your predictions for this season changed? Mo, you said I was wrong on some stuff.
No, I was wrong.
We're wrong on stuff every year.
Warriors. I was a little bit higher on them and thought we'd have a little more from them. I didn't know we'd have several meltdowns from Draymond before the 30th game of the season. And I'm trying to think some of my others. I'm banging the drum. I was right on with Indiana, so pretty happy with that one. I don't remember the others.
I think we all were sort of pretty big on Denver as a repeat candidate. I think that the team that I've sort of been the two teams I've been wrongest about have kind of, in my mind, swapped places as the second best team in the East. And I think we all kind of didn't trust Philly. I think both the way they performed, the way Tyrese Maxey has performed, and the way they've reconfigured their roster with the Harden trade. And the Bucks, despite being second in record, I think that the level of discontent is high. Playing a bunch of close games, they went to overtime with Chicago again. They have been the most overperforming clutch team in the league this year. Their transition defense we've talked about a bunch. So I think that I think that is the biggest change that I've had. Is I think that I kind of have sort of swapped those teams in my mind, while still thinking that the most likely finals matchup is Boston Denver.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger changes for me is that I feel a lot more comfortable with Boston at this point than I did at the start of the season. And I feel so much less comfortable with the Bucks. I didn't expect the Bucks defense to just dive off a cliff like it has. It's unsettling to a certain degree because they really, like, it's only that point of attack personnel, but then their perimeter defense just isn't what we expect out of a Bucks team. And so when they occasionally go through these scoring droughts, which isn't much, it just stands out. When they can't get a bucket and can't get a stop, it's very weird.
I mean, the bigger problem is they just play in transition defense. So like their half court defense is middling, but they give up the largest proportion of transition plays in the league. And that's so jarring from the having seen we'll do the basics well, which is sort of the 5 years of Budenholzer was, we're going to win all of our games against the bad teams because we're going to do the basics well. And they've still won those games, but there were teams that would had average margins of victory against bad teams, 10, 12, 14 points a game. And they're doing it by like 4 or 5. They're playing, like I said, clutch games against bad teams. And that's, they've ridden their luck on that, but it'll catch up to them eventually.
Yeah, but I just think like their perimeter defense is awful. It is just, I mean, there's only so much. It's what Rudy Gobert experienced in Utah. There's only so much Brook Lopez can do at the rim and so much Giannis can do rotating over at the rim when they just allow drive after drive after drive. And that's been a massive problem for them with everything that they have going. I want to go back a little bit because Dave's saying he's more comfortable with Boston. I'm going to throw this out there. That's almost
more comfortable
default.
than I was. More comfortable
than you were.
Right.
More comfortable than you were.
Yeah.
I want to make you a little more uncomfortable with that. It's their offense hasn't changed.
Oh no,
Porzingis
no.
Porzingis helps.
Porzingis helps though. Yeah,
helps a ton. But their offense is exactly what it was last year, and
it's exactly what it's been for 5 years.
Yeah.
Mo, like it hasn't changed. Period.
But the issue with that is, I am going to be fascinated watching this team all year long at the end of games. It might not matter because A, their defense is going to be so damn good if everybody's healthy. And B, there are not a lot of teams in the East that are standing in their way. Where I look at it, going like, wow, like the trip there might be pretty easy for them. Easy-ish, I should say. With all that. So it might not matter, but it is their offense, and especially at the end of games, that I am fascinated about because they literally just run all game long, one action to an ISO. And you can live on that for a while, but I don't know if you can survive, if you can fully win on that.
I think that the optimistic take would be, and this is why I think we're all surprised, not necessarily that Porzingis has been good, but how vital he's become to them so fast. And I think it's like the Tatum Porzingis pick and roll. If that's your one action into an ISO, that's just the best single action that they've had in this time period. Like Horford pick and roll with Tatum is fine. A Porzingis is just an order of magnitude more dangerous, more difficult to cover.
But it breeds other things, right? Like that's
right.
Yes, you are 1,000% correct. And if it was just those two, and the ISO into one, the one action into an ISO with those two, and then everything else they ran regular offense, be like, that's freaking great. Because then you can do other things. But then it becomes a situation where it's Jaylen Brown doing that. It becomes, they run an action that, brings Jaylen Brown off a flare, and then it's ISO for Jaylen Brown. It's, the distribution of all of these ISOs to me is wild. Like, how many guys are you going to allow to be just isolation players?
Well, I would not allow Jaylen Brown. Just for the record,
I wouldn't allow Jaylen Brown. I wouldn't
yeah.
allow Drew Holiday. I wouldn't allow Derek White. Like, I wouldn't allow Horford. Like, there's a lot. Like, but they're all doing it.
I know.
I would like to see them, if Jaylen Wright, Drew Holiday gets a little guy on him. I would like to see them occasionally like run him into the post and let him bully ball if they get a smaller guard on him. I think that's especially with someone who can pass, obviously. That would be a good change of pace for them to use from time to time, because teams are a lot of teams are going to go small against them because you kind of have to. So there's going to be situations where he's going to have, I don't know, a TJ McConnell, a Tyrese Maxey, whoever else on him, someone he can either put in the basket or draw the help that then lets them play against rotation, which is, what you want to run an offense to do. Yeah.
Anything else you guys feel like you sort of didn't see coming, or maybe you saw it coming? Did you guys have, we all kind of, we sniffed on Orlando a little bit. I feel like the Pacers, Mo, you were all over that one for sure. Minnesota felt like we were a year early on last year. This is more what we all expected when they got Rudy. Rudy looks great, and that's been a big reason for their success. But overall, I think my biggest miss so far was having the Bucks in that elite tier with Denver and Boston. They're not quite there for now. It doesn't mean they can't get there, but they're not there yet.
It's still a quarter of the season. Like, just remember, and the lessons, that we should take from last season, the Lakers were 2-10 or whatever it was to start the season, and they went to the Western Conference Finals. Miami barely made it through Miami barely made it through the play-in tournament, and they went to the finals. Like, there is I think we might have talked about it last week. We've talked about it before in the past. Like, we used to say the 20-game sample lets you know where everything's going to probably fall in the NBA season. I think that's gone. And I think massive amount of stuff is going to change throughout the course of the season. The Bucks can get there, and I know Bucks fans got all mad last week or something about one of the things we said, but like, the Bucks can get there. They certainly can. They got a long way to go. They just got to figure these things out. And
Bucks fans were upset. Bucks fans were upset about the thing that I just said, which was, we said they're not in the top tier. I'm sorry, it's the top tier. They're in the next tier. You've got Giannis and you've got Dame.
I didn't expect Philly to be in the top tier, but they're there.
They're pretty good. Philly is fascinating. Hey, speaking of December 15th is Friday. A lot of guys are going to be eligible to be traded for. I think Philly is a team to keep an eye on as far as getting a third guy. But I like their team as it is. So maybe they could pick up someone who is maybe a bit more of a high-level role player instead of going for a star. But they're playing. Hey, Nick Nurse has been surprising this season.
It's been good. It's
been really good.
I think that's a future podcast for us, is a future topic for us, is like if there's a guy that helps this possible champ. The one we've sort of batted around, I don't know if we've mentioned on the show, is like, can we get Malcolm Brogdon to Orlando?
Oh my gosh, yeah,
is sort of the one we've been. But I think there's probably 5 or 10 of those kind of one weird player to solve this team kind of trades that we can fantasize about.
We'll do that one in a few weeks. That's going to do it for this week, folks. For Seth Partnow and Mo to Kill, I'm Dave DeFore, and this has been Nerder, She Wrote, on the Athletic NBA Show.